Well, hello, Mark.
Hello.
A new face or a new
Well, I
name.
am a face here. I'm sorry, you are.
We are both. Well, that's true. I said a new face up could be mine to you or yours to me. Welcome to the group.
Well,
Reached out.
this is my first time trying to participate. I'm with J Frog.
Awesome.
So, oh, you're Steve.
Yes, I was
Your name.
talking to Steve or Stephen Chin. I've actually
Yeah,
realized
Steve. Yeah, Steve Chen. So, yeah, I work for him. I'm a part of the Persia project, and he told me about what you were doing, and it sounds like there's enough of an overlap that we need to at least know what you folks are doing. So here I am.
Welcome to the group. Yeah, it was pretty impressive work. It was. I'm hoping we can get the syndication stuff going so we can align all the, not just align, but just get them working together so that.
Well, we have a lot to do ahead of us. And part of what we're doing is maintaining a metadata model of all of the different types of artifacts that we need to support of necessity. It's a extensible model. While we try to make it generic, it's never going to be complete because there'll always be somebody who just needs
one more thing.
Yes.
Recording in progress.
Hey, Samir. I don't know why I didn't get that sound. That's interesting. Do other people get that sound when they log in?
Yeah, I get that almost every time.
I wonder if that's because I'm the host. Okay, just curious. So Mark, for this one, we focus more on the notary, on the signing part. I know that was part of the interest as well. We have the Aura's artifact stuff at 8 or the next hour, depending on what time zone you're in. Although we weren't planning on having the meeting today because Michael is out sick. If you're free in the next hour or whatever's left over from this, I'm happy to talk to you about some of the metadata stuff too.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to understand where you're going with all this. We're going to put metadata in a database that's separate from the artifacts, but still signed with identities that we tie back to a blockchain so that we are confident that we can tie everything back to at least our notion of identity.
Fair enough. Well, maybe that's a good topic for this conversation because just to try to frame some of it, we're gonna, Melin's here, great. Melin's topic was the extensibility, but why don't we, I'd love to queue up some thoughts about what you guys are doing maybe after as a second agenda item.
Yeah, it's what we're doing is we're still in very early stages, so anything I tell you is preliminary at best.
Fair enough.
Yeah, actually that would help. Understanding alternate identity types, because we actually going to look at a draft of how notation will support pluggability of different providers, signing providers, which may have its own notion of what identities are, which may have its own mechanisms to access key and certificates.
And I don't know if this helps. The model that we're likely to use is one where we have our own notion of identity, and then its attributes of that can be evidence of external identity, which can be whatever it needs to be, anything from an X.509 certificate to some kind of a GPG trust chain or whatever. It's extensible that way. What we'll make of it, I don't know yet, but at least it's extensible.
Cool.
We have this model when we started this, trying to get all the different people together, just referring to like this. If you've ever been to the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona or any of the Gaudi stuff, he created these models and more models and more models, keep on iterating so people can see how these three-dimensional, creative things would have formed together. So a lot of this stuff has been a lot of iterations and assemble something, see what it looks like, go back and reshape, and so yeah, a lot of these stuff you have to kind of dig in to know what the end result's going to look like. All right, we are just at 5 minutes there, so I left the link, just a reminder for you, Mark. What we do is we sign into that HackDoc and there's agenda items. We try to take notes, and we any other agenda items. So why don't we queue up a second one there?
Hack doc, I didn't get that link.
If you look in, do you see the chat session?
Yeah, okay, got it.
And in there, that's where we have the call information, agenda, meeting notes, and that kind of stuff. Actually, Marino, who's on first today?
Who's what? Sorry.
Who's sitting in the chair?
I think I did it last week. So I think it's you.
Okay. Maybe that's one of the things we need to keep in the notes is who was last. So let me just do that here. Actually, I just put it next to my name this week. Okay. So Mark, if you want to add an item for what you want to talk about as that second agenda item, we can queue that up after. Lynn is done.
I didn't have any specific thing that I came to listen more than to talk. If you have questions, I'm willing to cautiously answer questions.
Okay.
We have directions, but nothing is final. So do I need to sign into this thing too?
I believe you need to have some ID so that they can track history.
No, that worked.
You all set? All right, I'll let Mark have fun with hack and so forth. Milind, floor is yours for your doc.
Okay, cool. So that's the first agenda item. Here's the draft HackMD. It's not a PR. It still needs to go through some revisions before I can submit a PR. We can take about, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes to read. It's fairly short. To give context, this is mainly document is talking about what mechanism and specs or contracts we'll use to for different vendors or third parties to implement plugins that implement signing or verification capability. The examples would be remote signing services, HSM, interaction with HSMs and signing based on that. I have only covered the verification part. I think we can look at some of the patterns here, see if that makes sense. I haven't extended it to, sorry, I've only covered the signing part. The verification is expected to follow similar patterns. So I have the link in the chat. We can take about 15 minutes and then cover the comments on the doc, have a discussion.
So this just kind of goes to the goal we initially set out is we don't want anything in Notary to dictate how signing should happen. It's more of an interface, and we want to integrate with all the existing providers that are out there. So and then just when folks are done, just raise, sorry, Lynn, go ahead.
Yeah, so yeah, at a high level, that's the target. There is a notion of, and I haven't defined it very clearly, notion of a default provider. What do we want to support built in so that customers can just get started with some model? That probably will be some basic X509 would be example of one.
When folks are done reading, just raise your hand using the little reaction thing and Zoom there. Mark, we take the first couple of minutes and we all read together. So this way everybody gets has an opportunity to get on the same page. And that's
Okay.
It's an Amazon model that works pretty well.
Sounds realistic.
Marina, you just showing off that you're a student that can read lots of stuff fast?
No. Maybe the practice does help. I don't know.
We'll do another 2 minutes. Just not sure if everybody's found their hand or not.
How do I raise my hand?
Welcome to Zoom with Who Moves My Cheese. There's reactions at the bottom. If you click on reactions, you'll see a bunch of icons. Some of them, like the thumbs up and smile, and some of the others are temporary, so they go away. So that's why we use the hand raise.
The hand raise is one of the emoticons.
One of the reactions. Are you on a Mac or Windows or?
I'm on a Mac.
I'm assuming the UI is the same. You can just go like this for now. But basically, there's.
Yeah, it doesn't much matter. I think we get the idea. The number.
Does anybody have a Mac that can help them where it is? I'm assuming
It's
it's.
Yeah,
if you have it like full screenish, it's the reactions is on the right of the middle,
and
and then
it's a separate button.
Yeah.
I was looking at all the emoticons.
oh yeah.
Okay. All right, Melinda, do you want to start digging through? And-
Yeah, give me a sec. I'll share screen.
And just for the next transition for quorum, we shift to using hands raised for who wants to talk. So Zoom does keep track of who raised their hand first. So we can use that for kind of ordering if conversations get busy. Go for it.
All right. Again, to set context, I've explored one particular plugin model. There are different levels. For example, I allude to some of them where you want a plugin which knows about how to interact with HSM, but does not necessarily want to implement the notation signature specifications, etc., which is also a good model. Here I've basically focused on one where the complete signing operation, including envelope generation, is offloaded. I'll go through the commands. So signature envelope, I'll add a reference. We have another spec doc where we talk about the signature format and its components. So offloading the manifest creation, I think the only example I see is where the plugin needs to have full control, including generation of annotations. Let me.
So the reason I was asking is, we'd like to be able to support signing for things that don't wind up in a registry. So it's not the primary goal, but it is a stretch goal. So I'm trying to understand how intimate does it need to know around the registry concepts, which is the manifest is a registry concept, but because the annotations that get put in the manifest of the signature wouldn't be signed, right? So could it be sent more like, here's some name value pairs? I'm exploring some ideas on how to decouple things a little bit. That's all.
Sure. Is the concern that plugin now needs to understand the manifest format?
It's not just the manifest format, but it's because that's a yes, obviously, but it's the manifest is a registry concept. if we wanted to sign files that are distributed through other means because they're windshield wiper drivers or something like that, it may or may not be distributed through a registry. So does the signing service we're interacting with need to know around the manifest concept, or does it know how to sign a payload? I'm thinking this out loud, which is a descriptor, which you could argue is a registry concept. Maybe not. So I'm trying to explore.
Yeah, we can go down that path too. I based it on basically there was a previous, this is back in August. We had a discussion around, I think, would notation be aware and sign just registry artifacts or other artifacts? I think at that point we said just registry artifacts. But if we plan to expand that scope, I'm up for it. I see Faisal and Brandon raising hands. Yeah, can you please chime in?
Yeah, so I'm thinking it probably makes sense to pass a descriptor to the plugin and then allow the plugin to extend that if you need to. And so the plugin could always add more annotations if it needed to put its own data in there. But at least you wouldn't put that onus on the plugin itself to look up those descriptor IDs, the digest, and all that data. That could all be done by notation in one place.
So,
Okay. Go on, Faisal.
yep, sorry. So my suggestion here would be, which I have included in the document as well, is we only offload the signing operation, right? And the validation operation. And what we need to sign should be handled by the notary. I mean, the core functions that we have in Notary CLI. The advantage of this thing would be that in the future, if there are any extensions to the notary specification, implementation, or we want to extend notary itself, right? Those things could be extended, and then we are just offloading the signing operation. My fear is that if we pass the manifest or we allow these signing plugins to basically add their data, then in the future it will become a bottleneck where we would say, okay, we cannot extend our core specification because now all the signing plugins need to be updated for some reason, right?
I think again,
So-
there's I think that part makes sense. I think there is a spectrum here, and I can make a better job in the requirements for what are the different cases that we see. If I can try to dissect the signature format and see if there's anything specific that the server side. The only thing I could think of is in the response manifest, we have annotations like here, and these can be influenced by the specific certificate or any other identity material that was used. So only the signer will know that is in a particular model. But yes, like for example, with the HSM model, which doesn't know about any signature format, just has a primitive sign operation, it doesn't doesn't know any of these details. What you basically get back from that HSM is in this signature format, notation would probably pass in just this bit and nothing else, and get back the signed payload, and then assemble all of the signature envelope by itself. That is another model in that spectrum of how much to offload versus how much is used through notation.
Yeah,
So,
and the PKCS 11 model and also the GPG signing model. Basically, both of them can be, I mean, both of them can function then, right? So yeah, I completely agree. PKCS 11 is this model, also GPG as well. Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure I follow when you're saying you want to sign a hash. Are you saying you want to sign just the descriptor, or sorry, the digest, or are you saying that you want to hash the whole descriptor that has the annotations and everything in it and then sign that hash? Which direction?
It's not the hash. It's the payload that we describe here in this document. So it would be this payload.
That was my assumption, but what I'm seeing
Yep.
is that we're saying there's going to be some kind of client-side hashing. I'm trying to understand that request. That's
No,
probably
I
a
didn't.
question for Faisal.
Yep. So, so when I say client-side hashing, basically when the payload is passed, what I'm suggesting is that we pass the hash of the payload, right, instead of the payload itself. Because if the payload gets bigger, then in enterprises, this could be a bottleneck on the server. It becomes server-side hashing, right? And if your objects are bigger, right now, of course, we are talking about smaller objects. This is a text file, right? But generally, to offload those things, client-side hashing is used in code signing, and basically then it's independent, whatever you parse, right? So so again, it's an idea, but yeah, it
No,
depends.
I get that model. What you're describing is digest signing, where you pass the digest and the server just acts on the digest. What that doesn't provide is the server side or the signing service, in some cases, needs to add annotations or may need to, for example, generates. No, I don't think TSA is an issue here, but it could act on that payload and modify it. I think related to the size concerns, I think OCI doesn't have limits to annotations, but we can probably have upper bounds on what the payload that needs to be signed, what is the size limit that we accept.
Yeah, I would push to make sure that when we pass the payload, when we pass something to the plugin, that we pass the entire payload, and then that plugin could potentially extend it like we've been talking about. But also, I wouldn't want to hash that whole thing. You know, I think we've got two different things we could talk about for the hash. One is that digest right there, and the other is we hash the entire payload and send just that hash. I would avoid both of those because just in the digest, like you were just saying, we're going to lose some of the other annotations in there. And if we hash the entire thing, then that's getting into trying to make sure that the client that reproduces this later on has all the data they need to be able to reproduce it in the future. And that's not something I think we can be assured of.
Yeah, and I think, and I'll add a diagram there to help with I mean, like, for example, if it's a size concern, or say a particular provider just supports digest signing, this plugin is actually split into a local component and whatever that local component interacts with, including remote HSMs and cloud services. So the plugin is basically an adapter which can do anything. It can generate a local hash and pass it to the remote signing service if that is the capability the remote signing service has. So we can, I think at the plugin interface level, the payload needs to be passed, but the plugin implementation itself can do any transformations it needs before it passes on to the underlying signing mechanism. Does that make sense?
Yep, it makes sense. Yeah, we are just floating ideas. Yeah, but yeah,
Sure.
It makes sense. Yeah.
No, Faisal, I think Milind kind of touched on it, but Mark had his hand raised, so I want to yield to you, Mark.
Well, I had a different line of comment, but I'm just wondering, how does somebody know how to correctly verify it? I mean, there's two things that they need to know. First of all, I need to know what verification plugin to use, because we're not telling them. And then the verification plugin needs to somehow know what the public key is that it needs to use to do the verification.
Yeah, so
Sorry, just a suggestion. That's a great train of thought. Can we wrap up on the Faisal thing? Because
Yeah,
let's come to that one right next. Because I I thought that was covered, but it might, reading it, it might not be in there. Faisal, I thought that one of the things that Melinda covered really well was, because I think what you're talking about is if we're trying to send a 5 gig payload, such as the actual container image to the service to sign, creating a hash of it is a much more efficient way to do that. Was that your root concern?
Yeah, yeah. That's my
Okay.
root concern, right? Of course, when we are talking about smaller payloads, right, then of course it doesn't matter. The internet these days is very quick, right? But for example, if we have a bigger payload, then what we are suggesting is we pass that payload to the server, and the server will do the hashing, and then it will do something. So server side hashing has some issues when we are talking about payloads. I was just suggesting that if we want to avoid that thing, then we do client side hashing. But
So-
but Milan has basically suggested here, which I agree as well. We give this capability to the plugin itself. If it wants to do something, they can do it, right? There are still some conceptual issues that I will raise here, because when somebody is offloading signing, generally in enterprises, people do not want to change that data then. Once that signing operation is being called, conceptually, they are like, this is my final data, which I want to sign. They do not intend to change that data and then sign it. But again, we can name it something else, right? A pre-signing step and then a signing step. That's something else, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I think so. Because you're new to the group. Welcome, by the way. We talked about when Mark first joined. I think what you're talking about is what a descriptor already does, actually. So a descriptor, that digest, that ID that's in there. In fact, right there. But I don't know who's sharing. Is that Melinda?
Yeah.
Okay. See the digest right there.
Yeah.
That digest is already a hash of the content. So what's interesting, what I like what you're kind of saying is it's already a small payload. So we're not sending the 5 gig. The 5 gig image, I'm just making up a number here, is already hashed in that digest. In fact, it's secured, air quoting secured, with a size and then the media type. What I think we were interpreting your comment is if the annotations are too big and if there's too many annotations, which of course strings of annotations are certainly smaller compared to 5 gig. What I like about what we just talked about with the client is if somebody does want to get into the details of the blobs that descriptor represents, a client plugin could go and fetch more data, but actually the whole signing thing we're doing here doesn't even need to go back and get the blobs. It actually can just use the descriptor. So I think we have that balance of your concern. We don't want to send 5 gig across the wire. We don't even need to have 5 gig locally, because the concepts of a registry, the descriptors, have already compacted that down to something that we have a loose security around.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's great. Yeah. Again, thanks. And these are my first few meetings, but yeah. Good to know. And yeah, just raising and floating few ideas. Thanks.
That's awesome. It's awesome to have you here. So I'll hand back to Mark on the name verification thing.
Yeah, it's not clear to me. How does somebody know what is the correct plugin? Perhaps somebody could be bamboozled into using the wrong plugin. And then, assuming they're using the right plugin, how does it know how to verify the signature?
Sure. So I don't have an answer here because I haven't covered the verification part yet. I have some ideas, but they're not on paper yet. We'll focus. I think what I'm looking for is feedback around. Is there enough detail in how the plugin is registered and its related configuration, so we are able to map when you say sign using this key, it's able to get to the correct plugin. But I think some of your concerns would be applicable in both signing and verification. Like for example, multiple plugins may register for the same identity type. There may be collisions, or you could hijack a particular identity and say I sign for this.
Perhaps it's one thing that might be helpful is if the signing plugin included some information about what the correct verification plugin is to use.
Yeah, I expect that they actually like counterparts, like if a particular key management scheme or whatever, a vendor, third party distributing this, either implements a signing and relies on standard verification in notation, or they vend sign plus verify implemented in the same plugin. I think we can decide if it makes sense to put in restrictions such that they have to be the same binary.
The thing that I'm thinking of that I don't think you are open to it, but there's a rather bad bug in the specification for JSON web tokens, where you can specify in the header of it what the signing algorithm is, and what's in that's not verified. And so, yeah, you're familiar with that. So yes. It would be helpful, I think, to have the signer specify what the correct mechanism is and have that specification covered by the signature.
Sorry, I didn't understand that. But
if the signer indicates this is the way that the signature needs to be verified, and that information is included in these, well, I'm not quite sure how to best solve it, but there needs to be
sure.
some...
I think just the problem statement will help.
Yeah. Anyhow, that's all that I had.
I guess here, to summarize, if I got it right, the concern is somebody can hijack the verification or misconfigure the verification.
Yeah, if the consumer of this can be bamboozled into using the wrong verification plugin, then they may accept something that they shouldn't.
Yep, that makes sense. I'll make a note of it. I think it should be one of the things covered when we talk about verification extensibility, or even the security model of the plugins isn't covered in this document yet. I'll continue with the next comments. Let's see. Was there anything I didn't read through, this has collected more comments. Is there anything, Brandon, that needs to be covered, or we can move to the next set of comments?
I think I said most of it, and you can read a bunch of those later on. I did just want the last one in there is just to replace manifest with descriptor. I don't think the plugin cares that it's a manifest. It's just looking at the text of the descriptor. It's pointer to a manifest rather than the manifest itself. That's just nitpick.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have a good answer here. We need to define and we have some notion of in the signature verification policy, which had the trust root and trust anchors defined. We have an initial version of it. It has all of that in the same config file. I think that needs to be defined more clearly to separate this out. My initial ideas here is we pass the relevant data to the validation plugin, including local trust stores and anchor configuration, and it uses that along with the signature to do the verification.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I wasn't sure if it needed to be explicitly called out that we would be doing more capability, or if that was just kind of implicit and
sure,
what
yeah, again,
needs to be doing in general.
Yeah, this is the verification is super light on details. I'll expand it for the next revision.
I think leaving a lot of it implicit makes sense, and so I don't want to push you too hard to define everything, but just throwing it out there in
No,
case it wasn't.
yeah, it's good food for thought. Plugin, yeah, they can be implemented as one. I think there's a related question here whether we should restrict that to be one. I'll not go into that discussion yet. We can cover that in a subsequent meeting. So yeah, this is a good comment. I think I had initial similar thoughts, but I think what I've heard based on what is available in Go, because notation, at least the notation CLI and library implementation is in Go. And that's the library is in Go because a lot of the popular tooling in the Kubernetes space is Go based, so easy to integrate. Go doesn't have great plugin capability built into the language or libraries itself. And we don't want to restrict vendors to Go, and they should have a choice of implementing it in any language. That is where this requirement comes in.
We've seen people want to do Python or other things, so there wasn't enough benefit to limit to one language is really what it came down to.
Mark, did you have a comment? I see your hand raised.
No, I guess I need to take my hand down.
All right.
Sorry. Now I
No
know.
worries. So this one, I didn't go into the detail. I looked at. We had some discussion around this. I can put in why we are going with this mechanism at a high level. We're looking for cross-platform mechanism that allows you to implement plugins using cross-platform. And given that Go itself doesn't have a cross-platform plugin mechanism, the standard input output is the kind of primitive way to implement this. But I'm open to suggestions here. I didn't get what you meant by even via STDIO.
That's the gRPC via STDIO. It's possible, but I'm not sure it's efficient.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest question here is like any mechanism that is cross-platform, and yeah, would work on Linux, Windows, Mac, etc. Are there any other suggestions here, Brandon? Anybody else? Because you might have more exposure to.
I was just about to drop a comment because I've seen a lot of this from like Docker does their plugins on their side, and it's just normal text over stand in, stand out. That just feels the most portable to me, the most language independent.
Yeah, this is right. I'll fix it. That should go through STDN. All right. Well-known directories to look in. Config file secure, could update the config. Yeah, the way I'm looking at this currently is the plugin registry configuration is under notation user config directory, whatever that ends up being, and that is different than where the plugin can be loaded from.
I guess my question is, do we need to drop the binaries and do a configuration? What is the benefit for having to do a two-step operation? Is it because of security? Is it because of pathing?
Yes. So yeah, I preferred the two-step where there there is something at a particular location rather than, sorry, I prefer the model where you have a binary placed somewhere on the file system and you need to run an explicit command to register it rather than automatically load it from a well-known directory. I think primarily for security, as in something else on the system could just drop binaries or things in a well-known directory, and that would be automatically picked in. This would add one additional step when you're configuring this, but I think it is reasonable. It is a one-time registration, and on subsequent, like it gets persisted into the plugin registry config, and on subsequent ones, it automatically knows and loads things.
I guess I'm just asking from a, I'm trying to focus on the KISS model, right? Keep it silly simple. Is if I can secure the file, put it this way, if I can drop a directory and if it means I have to edit the file, as long as I can drop the directory, a bin in an unsecured directory, because if basically if I can put it anywhere on disk, all I need is access to the config file to be able to trick it to load from a different location, which maybe I could even get into memory. I don't even have to change the physical file. If it can only be in a certain directory, then the environment, as long as they can secure that directory to only certain entities can drop binaries in it, then you have a security model. If the model is it can be put anywhere, then I don't know what benefits we get by making it 2 steps versus 1. And I'm just,
I think
I'm
the
just
securing
challenging
the
complexity.
securing the notation directory may not be something that everybody does. Like who are more security aware would set up the correct permissions. But
But would they be able to
yeah,
set
I'm
the
not
file
assuming that.
permissions? If they can't set the directory permissions, why would they set the file permissions?
Which file permissions? The
Config
plugin.
file. Yeah. In other words, if the directory isn't secured, so anybody could drop anything in there, then did they secure the file? So if I know to drop something in that directory, can I also just edit the file to say, look in a particular directory?
That is a good point. I think we'll have to figure out implementation. My thought was you need to run the command to register it and have no other way to register it, including updating the config directly. I see Brandon and Faisal raise hands.
I think that's what was up first.
Yep, thank you. So I think what I get from this description is that you're suggesting something that tools like HashiCorp also does, right? For their plugin system. You need to have a plugin binary and then you need to register it, right? So just to add to this point, this is a model that already exists in the open source community, where you basically have a binary located in a particular location, and then you have to run a command to load it up, to register it within the system. So is it something similar, Milind, or are you suggesting something new here?
It is similar. I think the only difference from what you described is I don't have a restriction on where the plugin needs to be located. It can be anywhere on the system.
Okay, thanks.
Brandon?
I'll throw a couple things out where I don't think you can say that users can't modify that config file. They will. I mean, it's whether you want.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to figure out what would be a good way of forcing users to run a command rather than.
I don't think you'll find one. The other thing I'll throw out there is what I've seen a lot of times, at least from the Docker side, when they did their plugins, is the plugin tends to be just a small shell wrapper script that gets dropped in that well-known directory, and then that points out to some external binary that's in some other location. So you might get that 2-factor thing in there by or that indirection that you want to have flexibility to install these plugins in other locations, plus having that well-known location where the plugins are registered officially in by other methods.
I think you're saying in that mechanism, there's no explicit register command, just goes by a convention of well-known directory.
Yeah, it kind of finds a little middle point, I think, between where you and Steve are coming from, where you still have that well-known location that people have to register their plugin within, but you still might have your application itself installed externally. It's just hitting a little wrapper script that knows where to find the actual plugin.
Right. So okay, so you don't crowd or just drop in all of your dependencies in that particular directory.
Yep.
Okay, I agree with Steve. There needs to be a threat model, pros and cons. I'll continue. So revocation check supports verification. I think so. Like for example, YubiKeys or HSMs, I'm not sure, maybe, may not have a notion of revocation, or there may be some identity types that don't support revocation. They just support verification, which is why I separated it out.
I think where I was going with that is the plugin interface itself just knows, I check this, I can either do a signing or I can do a verification to this plugin. And then the plugin kind of does everything from there. Maybe you want to know more details about it, but that might be more metadata than it is actual API control that you want to have.
Okay. I'll think about it. I get what you're saying. Shive, I think you're saying have a top level key called capabilities and something like that.
Yes, instead of having something like supports, or A supports B, supports C, supports D, we have capabilities and A and B and C and D. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that will simplify. I'm all for making it more readable. Is TSA a capability? Good point. I haven't covered it there. I'll add, because one of the things in signing is some providers may have a notion of supports TSA signing versus some based on the plugin level may not. They just may know a sign, and then the TSA integration is through notation. I'll add details for it. Samir, can you, I didn't get that.
Yeah, I think basically I was saying is this, we can't govern as to what all those type ID pairs will be, like depending on different signing providers. It could be an arbitrary number of long list of type value pairs.
So you're saying add multiple keys using the same command?
No, what I'm saying is if I am Azure and I have 5 different type value things I need, then it has to be a free format. We can't dictate any format on this.
Oh no, it's not a format. This is an example. I'll like so okay. Yeah. So the type for Azure would be Azure would define its type, and its plugin in the discovery phase would say what type of identities it supports. And the ID really is, again, this is free form. Different providers have their own notion of the underlying resource ID. This is just an example, and I want to add some more examples as well. Okay. And I think that, again, the examples are all cloud providers skewed. Want to add some other examples too, and I'm open for suggestion. What would be another example to add?
Yeah, I think the other example will be signing from the host. Like I know we are putting it in a config file today, but we should probably make it a line here as well.
Brandon, Steve, do you have any suggestions for any other type to cover? I remember, Brandon, in early conversation, you talked about being able to plug in. Like you have your, for example, own key in a HashiCorp vault.
Yep.
Would that be a good example? I don't know what exact capabilities come with the HashiCorp vault. Is it just a key store or key plus certificate?
You can think of it kind of like a software-based HSM.
Okay.
We'll queue that up. One of the things we were discussing offline was obviously Azure will implement the Azure one, AWS will implement the AWS one. And by collaborating on both of them, we'll figure out, did we have enough extensibility for both? We'd really like to get somebody that wants to implement, an open source provider, what a default provider, if that's HashiCorp or something else. I'd love to see somebody sign up to author that one. And then as the three of us are saying, hey, this doesn't support this, I need this, we can actually land on a place that has the extensibility we need for two clouds, which, have different capabilities, and something like an open source provider would be great as well.
One other thing I'd throw out, I know we're running short on time, but on the verification, it might make sense to have some option to do chaining of plugins. And so you run multiple plugins for the verification to say, verify that it's been signed by the right person. Then you might have another plugin that goes and checks some annotations to validate that it came through some proper channel or whatever.
Can we write that up? That sounds interesting. I can't tell if it's a conceptually interesting, but valid, or like super valid.
Yeah.
If you can write up something for that, that'd be awesome.
Yep.
Profile same as identity. Yeah. So yeah, in this case. So in this example, this my profile is basically picking up this key and associated metadata. More than one plugin that can handle the key. I haven't addressed the edge cases. I'll add them. The idea is either during registration or when you run notation the first time and it verifies the plugin configuration, it will error out saying there's conflicting plugins. So it probably wouldn't allow you to register if there's an existing one, and if you say registered by directly modifying the config, should validate it. Does that answer, Shiva?
So basically, when the notation CLI loads the plugin, it will iterate all the plugins and see whether there's a duplicate registering the type or not.
Yeah.
If there is one, then just fail, right?
Yes.
I have another concern that it doesn't mean each time I do notation sign, I need to run all the plugins to find out their capabilities.
Yeah, that's what this seems like. I'll think more about it if there's a more efficient way of doing it.
Okay, thanks.
How is notation picking which key to use for signing operation? Scope to different namespaces.
Mark was asking this also. I thought it was kind of obvious that when you, maybe it's just I've been using the notation sign command a lot lately, is in notation sign, when you can pass it a key, or there's default key. In the key, there's just it aligns with the provider. Is there something I'm not missing, or something I'm missing that's not?
Yeah, that was my intent.
Okay. Because both
Brandon,
Brandon and
you
Mark
clarify?
asked the same question, and it's just that it wasn't explicitly called out, or is there something that we're not thinking about?
I was writing about a little note there. I missed the question.
No worries. So both you and Mark asked effectively the same question of how do you align a provider with a key? And the concept was, and just because I've been using the notation sign command a lot, in notation sign, I can either specify the key or there's a default key that's configured. the assumption was where the key is defined, a provider is defined, either implicit because the name matches a directory or through config. So there is a one-to-one mapping, but you both asked the same question. Is it because that wasn't explicitly called out, or are we not thinking that of some other conflict that?
No, I think it just wasn't specified in here and I wasn't sure where that was getting tied together. And so
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't know if it belongs in
it.
here, if it just belongs in upstream of this in notation or not.
Makes sense.
I can add a few lines that describe the correspondence.
Because I know we've done a lot to say, here's the mapping of a key that can
Yeah.
sign a specific or is trusted for a specific namespace. And so I think doing the same for the sign key in addition to the verification key might make sense.
For the payload, is there a reason for that to be encoded? I guess I'm thinking mainly from the descriptor perspective or the payload that we defined in the signature format. That probably will need to be encoded if it based on the signature format. I was just thinking about the JWS one. Shiva?
Pardon?
I'm looking at this question. Is the payload in base 64? Currently, it is not. It is just assuming the payload to be
Just
this.
then because it's JSON, so it will have canonicalization issue. So it's better if you encode it into base 64.
Yeah, that makes sense for canonicalization.
Yeah.
And similarly here, the signature envelope, I'll make another pass through as based on this could be a different signature format, and this may not be just a JWS envelope, so that this needs to be encoded as well. Plugin does more than primitive signing. Yeah, that was the intent, at least for this level of plugin. I know there are other levels of plugins that we want to describe. I think I'll add one more where it satisfies our HSM integration where plugin implementer does not want to implement the details of manifest and envelope. I think this probably is the most open level of this interface, but it puts burden on the plugin implementer to implement all of these details, and we definitely don't want that for every plugin implementer. There are some cases where you just want to integrate with a primitive sign capability and have all the rest of the details handled by notation. Yeah, Brandon.
Yeah, I think we are over time, so I don't want to hog it up anymore, but I'll just say I threw a couple of my chain comments up there under the terminology for signing and verification. I just put it as a header. For signing, I'm thinking to chain plugins might make sense if you're to basically assign the artifact itself, then you might want to do something else that calls out to some TSA integration. Then you might want to do something that goes out and registers it with a transparency log, something like that. And that might make more sense as 3 separate plugins instead of 1.
Okay.
And then similar for the verification, where you might want to verify your signature, then you might want to go out and check for a revocation. It might be separately. You might want to have something else that's saying, let's verify the timestamp or some kind of minimum algorithm requirements. Make sure you're not using some kind of untrusted algorithm in there. Those also might make sense separate plugins.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks everyone for the feedback.
Thanks,
Back to you,
folks.
Steve. We are about it.
Yeah, no, I was gonna stop us, but I just figured let's go over. It's a great conversation. So next steps, I guess you'll take this and turn this into a PR and we can start.
Yeah, that is right. Again, I think the first version will probably focus on signing and then all that verification.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. We'll see you next week.